Hello everyone, and welcome to Fableheim. Today, I will be introducing and going over the basics of a new game, Mistover, which is releasing on October 10th for the PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC via Steam. If you are interested in trying out the game for free, there's currently a demo available, which is where all of my footage and my experience is coming from. Without further ado, let's begin. Mistover is a grim-dark JRPG dungeon crawler developed and produced by the South Korean developer Krafton Game Union, which is basically a reorganized Bluehole, the developers behind Terra and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Mistover is unlike those games, so you may notice a lot of inspiration was derived from a variety of other games. When it comes to gameplay, there are three main systems: a city to organize your expedition crew, sort through your loot, and prepare for future expeditions, the expedition map where you explore a procedurally generated dungeon, and the turn-based combat system. To begin, let's set the stage. When you begin the game, you are found wandering in a forest with amnesia, and are soon beset by enemies. This is a skippable tutorial. After you either defeat the enemies or skip the tutorial, soldiers will come and rescue you from the forest. The too long didn't read is that the mist is threatening to devour the world, and you are now approached by the very rich Duke to help prevent that. No pressure. But before the Duke properly hires you, he gives you a test to explore the first area of the game, which is pretty standard for these dungeon crawler types. After which you will gain access to all of the buildings in town that you can see here. If you played Darkest Dungeon before, you will notice quite a bit of aesthetic inspiration throughout the entire game, but none is more prominent than here in town. Even though I find the layout of its menus and UI to be more akin to Etrian Odyssey, that's not important. Here you can see your goal in the top right corner, a swirling, ominous vortex in the background, and an associated doomsday clock up here in the top left. I'll talk more about that later. And, of course, the 8 different buildings that you have access to once you have completed the introductory quest. The first of the buildings is the Expedition Center. Here, you can recruit new members, equip new items, and dismiss any members who have failed you. In the demo, there are 6 available classes. The first, well, we'll just go off this list. First is the Grim Reaper, which is kind of like a ranged debuffer, DPS type thing, personally my favorite. The Masochistic Sister, which is your healer. The Paladin, which is your traditional tank. The Witch, which is your traditional spellcaster. Apparently I have 2 Akashas. Definitely didn't realize that. The Shadowblade, which is like a rogue with potential utility, which is how I like to play them. And the Onmyoji, which is a bit of a buff bot, with some utility and some DPS, but mostly buffs. When the game fully releases, the Ronin and Werewolf classes will also become available. I will be doing more in-depth spotlight videos of all of the classes, so stick around if that's something that you're interested in. Every time that a member of your expedition corps gains a level, they will receive 1 skill point, which can be spent at the training camp. Here you can upgrade your abilities or learn a new one. Note that to learn a new ability, excluding the cooperative abilities that your members just learn by leveling up, you will need to hire a new character that knows said desirable ability, and once you teach it to your favorite character, they will disappear. I like to think that they were sacrificed to empower the character that has your favor. It does fit the overall Grim theme, I think. You can also randomize undesirable passive traits here if you feel like doing so. A few of them are really, really terrible. Speaking of empowering your favorite character, the Alchemy Workshop is where you can identify higher quality gear that you find, fortify gear that you plan on using by sacrificing gear that you do not, and disassemble completely useless gear into the resources used to identify and fortify. It appears I have a few items to identify. Yes, like that. See? Bonus guard. Pretty good for a paladin. Although not directly empowering your characters, the next building does aid your expedition corps overall. The support lab is used to research a plethora of upgrades, from increasing your maximum food, luminosity, and inventory, to increasing the amount of expedition members you can hire and their maximum level cap. This vital research is completed using various books located during expeditions. And extra gold, because everyone loves gold. Whenever you return to the city, all items that have been forged during your expeditions will be stored in, you guessed it, the storage building. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the storage is essentially a bank where you can examine any items you have obtained, no matter how you may have obtained them. Wink wink. Speaking of item management, the store is where you can purchase a limited supply of consumables, the most important of which is food. The stock will resupply every week, which is every time you return from an expedition, and I highly, highly recommend that you buy all 5 food every single week. The office is the home of Duke Heinrich, your aforementioned incredibly rich employer. But you interact mostly with his assistant, just like real-life administration. Here's where you accept intern and quests, and that's about it. The final area in town is the pier. This is where you select the next destination of your expedition core. Before you sally out, though... Ooh, purple iron lens. Before you sally out, there are 2 important things to do. First, this is where you decide who to bring along for your mission, verify their equipped abilities, and set up your default formation. Like this. Of these things, only the formation can be changed during an expedition. You can also see golden links between characters that signify they are in position to use a cooperative ability, which, again, we'll talk about later. You can also see at the bottom of the screen how much food and luminosity you will lose per step, more people cost more resources, and any bonuses that your formation is providing. Each character in your front column will provide additional guard, each character in your middle column will provide additional evasion, and each character in your final column will provide additional crit chance. And secondly, you can decide how many of your consumables that you're going to bring along. Please keep in mind that any consumables that you do not use will be corrupted by the mist and become polluted items. This reduces their efficacy and gives them a chance to trigger a negative effect upon use. Any consumables that you do not bring with you will be placed safely in storage. Once you are prepared, all that's left is to head out. I'll bring a few of these right now. When you launch your expedition, you will find yourself on the exploration portion of the expedition. Have I said that word enough yet? I don't think so. I've read some posts saying that this reminds people of the Mystery Dungeon series, but I always felt it more similar to the Legend of Legacy. Anyway, before we get into anything else, I want to quickly explain the basics of exploring the expedition map. On PC, you can move with the arrow keys, as such. Each step lost me food, so maybe I shouldn't have done that. And you can move diagonally by holding down D and moving in, pressing the appropriate arrow keys. Most importantly, you can see your current food and luminosity supply at the top right of the UI, and you'll find yourself staring at this UI element a lot. Food restores health and mana with every step, and you can use 30 food to activate an expedition ability, such as the Paladin's ability to destroy objects without causing group damage. Each class has their own expedition ability. For the sake of time, I'll be saving that for the class spotlight videos. If you run out of food, you'll begin taking damage with every step and no longer replenish mana. Luminosity is your light source. As luminosity depletes, the vision radius is reduced. When your luminosity has reached 0, there is a high chance that your group's formation will be broken should a monster engage you. On that pleasant thought, let's talk about the monsters. Enemies that are aggressive towards you appear as amorphous red blobs and will chase you down. You can usually lose them by walking into a series of bushes, or using the Shadow Blade's expedition ability to turn invisible for 15 steps, or the Witch's ability to teleport to a random location. This sounds fun. But as you can see, this sometimes puts you in more danger than you were already in. Down here, you can see a blue amorphous blob. This means that they are not aggressive towards you. They'll literally just stand there as you come attack them. I'm gonna use time stop once again to get out of here. Aside from the monsters attempting to kill you, there are several types of interactable objects in the expedition map. The most valuable of these are keys. These keys are littered around the map, and they open a single chest of the corresponding material, wooden, silver, or gold. You can see a wooden chest and a silver chest on the screen right now. There will always be a singular golden chest that will contain the rewards that were shown previously on the deployment screen. Another source of loot are the salvage piles that can provide a myriad of rewards. Typically, their loot is either materials for the alchemy workshop or consumables that have been corrupted by the mist. There's also gold. But there are also salvage piles that can restore health to your group, and there is usually one that will reveal the entirety of the map. Although not loot, the light flowers and the dormant light flowers are equally as important. These flowers will restore your luminosity bar to 300 without any upgrades. To me, it brings it up to 355. If they are dormant, you will need to sacrifice group health to light them up. Once they have been lit, they will remain that way for the duration of the expedition. The next type of interactable is an obstacle. I imagine these come in different forms based on different areas, but in the first zone, that is the forest, they are either bones that can be destroyed using the paladin's Crush Obstacles ability, or you can run into them and pick them apart with your hands, sacrificing group health. Oh, there's the heal. Demolish the obstacle, everyone takes 50 damage. The second type of obstacle are these poison puddles. These poison puddles can be removed using the Onmyoshi's expedition ability, or you can walk over them and cross your fingers. Sometimes, absolutely nothing happens. Every now and then you'll trigger the trap and slide away safely. Other times you'll inflict bleed on a party member. You can reduce bleed resistance, you can reduce move resistance, and you can get the absolute worst outcome of reducing food or luminosity by 15%. Looks like we're getting lucky here. It might be because I'm pretty high level. The last type of interactable is the exit, which we haven't found yet. This appears as a small circular rune that lights up blue when you approach it. So it's much like this rune where we entered the game, but it will light up to let us know that we can leave through it. By standing on top of it, you can leave the expedition. Do note that when you leave your expedition, you will not be able to return to this particular procedurally generated map. If you wish to return to the area for whatever reason, you will find yourself starting over in a new procedurally generated area. Before I discuss what happens when you leave and begin wrapping up the video, let's talk about the most exciting part of Mistover: combat. When you encounter a monster like this, you want to be the one to move into its square. If it moves into your square, the monsters will have the initiative, but if you attack them first, you will have the initiative. When combat begins, you'll see the 3x3 grid that you set up for your formation. The enemies are also in a 3x3 grid, and the most important thing to note about this, as you can see here, the white squares signify which column your character has to be in to use whatever ability you're trying to use, and the red or green grids signify how that interacts with the layout. So for example, Overflowing Love here will heal everyone on my side of the battlefield. And Sweet Folk can only be used from the second or third column, but can be used on any enemy column. Specifically, well, one enemy in any of the enemy columns. A little confusing. And if I were to use Sealbreaker here, which is one of the cooperative abilities, it would affect all enemies. But we're going to go ahead and use Sweet Foe here to stun one of our foes. Although first, I suppose we should go over the basics, even though I kind of skipped over that. Every character has a basic attack that does not cost any mana. For the Witch, it is Star Bullet. Every character can sacrifice their turn to move one square, and every character can block to mitigate damage from the next attack that they receive this turn and restore 20 mana. The exception of the mana thing being the Grim Reaper due to their unique resource. The Ronin and the Werewolf might also fall under this category, but we won't know until the game releases. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the turn order, but the turn order can change mid-turn. If an attack is evaded, the receiver of that evaded attack will be bumped up in the turn order in order to counterattack. That is only one of many buffs that occur during combat. There are flat stat increase buffs, flat stat decrease debuffs, a damage reflection buff, a guarding where a character is taking damage for another character, a provoke buff which is a taunt for players, and a stun debuff that you saw us use on one of the enemies. Stuns can be very powerful. All damage over time effects have been condensed into a single bleeding effect that you can stack very high. It's a lot of fun. In fact, all of these buffs can be stacked. If you're ever confused as to what buffs and or debuffs characters have, you can inspect the details of anyone on the battlefield by pressing E, and then C. So you can see over here, this torch has 1 turn left on his stun. I briefly mentioned these earlier, but during combat you'll want to try and utilize the powerful cooperative abilities that characters unlock as they level up. These abilities require certain positioning, and only one of them can be used per turn. My personal favorite so far is the cooperative ability for the Grim Reaper with the Shadow Blade. This requires them to be standing adjacent to each other, and it's an AoE effect that hits all enemy grids for respectable damage and attempts to inflict a minus 25% hit chance on all enemies. And it looks a little bit like this. As far as party compositions are concerned, I think you could get away with almost anything, but I do believe that one sister is almost mandatory for healing, at least early on. My personal favorite is the Grim Reaper, who's going to use Shadow Raid again. And I would highly recommend checking one out if you also enjoy debuffing enemies with ranged attacks, not using mana, and having the ability to steal enemy buffs. Please note that my characters are severely overleveled and overgeared for this level 1 to 3 zone, so don't expect your enemies to die that quickly. Once you have defeated the enemies, you collect your reward and continue your explanation. It's important to remember that your party does not return automatically to their default formation, and that you have to tell them to restore your formation if it was broken in any way. The default key binding on PC to do so is to hold the Q button and press C. Now that my brief explanation of combat has concluded, let's go back to the exit and what happens when your expedition finally ends. Here you can see the XP that you received, and any gold and items, and all sorts of upgrades that anyone learns during their level. For example, a corpse crew leveled up. A core crew has leveled up and unlocked a cooperative ability. Kuno, the Shadow Blade, unlocked magical shuriken with the Witch. Kasha has leveled up and gained a Jinx. This is one of the worst Jinx in the game, I think. Miscontamination. I'm gonna unlearn that soon. Here are all of our lovely items that we acquired, and all of our consumables that have been polluted by the mist, all of our acquired goods that will go into storage, and here is that pesky doomsday clock. That was freaking rude. The doomsday clock is a countdown to when the mist will become uncontainable and destroy the entire world. Your activity during your expeditions will decide whether the clock moves forward or is delayed. Any chest that remains unopened, any salvage pile not looted, any light flower not lit, and any monster not slain, although I don't believe this counts the gray respawned enemies, will cause the clock to move closer to midnight. If you complete everything, like I did but still moved closer to midnight, then the clock will either remain stationary or move backwards. I've had it move backwards once, but I'm not sure if that happens every time you have a perfect expedition. I also don't believe the clock can be set back any later than 9, even though that might be possible because there is a tick over here towards like 7 or something. So maybe. Personally, I feel that the Doomsday Clock mechanic is a little stingy. It makes it feel like when you return to areas, there's more of a chore to be done than, an exploration for fun. But that could just be me. After the clock most likely scolds you for missing that one salvage pile across the map from the exit point because you were out of food and dying with every single step, the stuff of my recent nightmares, you will return to town. So congratulations on completing your expedition. Thank you, me. I needed that. And thank you all for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you are interested in learning more about each of the classes, I will have spotlight videos up for them soon, TM, so make sure you subscribe and hit that stupid bell so YouTube knows that you want to be notified about my videos. Okay, thanks, bye!